Hey everyone, RogueGold here, welcome back to the Division 2, and today, damn people, these Descent comms keep getting me. So if you haven't caught up on my past few Descent and just general lore videos, this season keeps on giving in that department. I'm sure most of you know the deal, but in case you're unfamiliar, every week you can play the Descent mode, and if you defeat the Nemesis, you will earn 1 lore comm. This has been in place for several seasons now, and in general, it delivers some pretty good stuff. And so far, this season in particular has had some big tie-ins with the late Division Heartland, the Hearts on Fire audiobook, and all of that is weaving into the Division 2's ongoing narrative. And so, surprise surprise, this week's was another pretty big twist, and a lot of juicy details were given. Now I promise, I keep saying this, I will still do a recap of all of these comms at the end of the season, and as much as I intended to hold out for that to talk about this again, we've got to break down what this week's edition gives us. So, you already know what to do. If you enjoy videos like this and you want to stay in the loop on everything Division 2, then be sure to click that subscribe button. We would love to have you around. And without further ado, let's go. Alright, at the top, before we get into this, I want to give you your one and only spoiler warning. From here on out, we're going to be discussing things from not only the Descent comms of this season, but as well as the Hearts on Fire audiobook that I mentioned a moment ago, and Year 6 Season 1 of the Division 2. If you're not caught up on any of those three things and you do not want spoilers, then do not continue watching. Alright, now before we get into the details here, as always, I will of course play you the comms so that you have the proper context. And just as a side note, this has got to be in the running for one of the longest comms ever in the Division franchise. This thing clocks in at almost 2 minutes. So, settle in, take a listen.
She's an... Agent, I told you never contact me directly. You are breaking protocol. Wait, what do you mean she's an... Isaac pinged her signature requesting backup as she crossed the border 6 hours ago. Did you provide her with backup? Of course not. I know my orders and I will not deviate from the mission. Good. Good. But sir, sorry, Cal, why are we worried about Agent Hoskins being in... Well, first, how the hell does she even know about... She was in Lower Manhattan securing the City Hall the last time we talked. Fair enough. What's the second reason? She was in Lower Manhattan. You know who else was last seen in Lower Manhattan? Aaron Keener, sir. Exactly. And if those two aren't working together, I will eat my hat. She doesn't really seem the type. I mean, she killed her sister to save the Sarah camp. If she didn't go rogue then, I don't really see her going rogue now. Precisely. I'm sorry, sir. I don't understand your meaning. The woman who kills her sister for strangers is the woman who'll do anything for the mission. And if her mission has been corrupted, if Keener has manipulated her into believing I am the enemy, that's a woman who walks from New York to through a blizzard in February. That's not a woman I want to underestimate. Copy. Now, how about you finish the job? Get the Hunter roster off the Shade database onto that thumb drive and wipe out every last trace of the program. I'm not ready to activate the Hunter protocol. There's too much at stake, but we cannot let a rat like Keener know the identity of every agent with that security clearance. Do you understand what's at stake here, soldier? I do. Consider it done, sir. I've already backed up the roster on the drive. It's stashed in my bunk. Better to hide it in plain sight. I'm starting the wipe now. I need to get back to the team. Donovan called a meeting at the conservatory. Report back once you find out what he wants. And please, call me Cal.
Okay, so there is a ton to sift through here. Firstly, like most of the comms that we get, not only from the Descent mode, but also just in general in the game, all of this has been out of order. So we already know some of the things that play out after this moment in time. Firstly, we know that Melanie Hoskins does indeed arrive to Silver Creek. That is the redacted location that they refer to throughout this comm and through all of the comms this season. That was set to be the location in the Division Heartland. It's now being redacted because of that game's cancellation. So we know that she arrives there, but what's interesting is that she reports to Keener later on that the agents that were guarding this complex that Agent Zabala here seems to be tied with, all scattered and died. And what I'm wondering is that, is this the result of that weird little cough that we hear Agent Zabala here give in the comm? It wasn't really focused on it all, but we hear him cough and struggle to deliver one of his lines. Again, we don't know the full scope of what this complex is, but is it possible that there's some kind of virus breakout, something like that? I don't know, but I thought that was interesting. Secondly then, we do know that Hoskins and Keener acquire and currently possess the roster that Cal is referring to. And it's a pretty big deal. It's a roster of all of the Division agents that have Hunter clearance and classification. So it's going to be a very powerful powerful tool in the war to come, but even though here Cal is saying Keener cannot get his hands on that, we know that he does, because he told us in the most recent season of the Division 2, he says that he has it to show it to us when we arrive in Brooklyn. So again, because of the out of order nature of all of the Division storytelling, we know some of those details, but despite that, that doesn't mean that there isn't still several intriguing notes in here. Firstly, Cal says that he and Melanie Hoskins were in communication at one point, which is a pretty neat detail. That's not something we obviously saw in the Division Hearts on Fire. They do reference the events of that book, though, by mentioning the death of her sister, so that was cool to see. But, you know, it makes sense that Melanie would be talking to Cal. She was a first wave agent. Cal seemed to have greater input into the entire operation of that. He then brings up the possibility of her and Aaron Keener having ties, and I love how he recognizes that Keener believes that Cal is the enemy, because this kind of confirms that this is a two-way war. You know, ever since Keener came back a few months ago in the storyline, he's been saying Natalia and Cal are the threat. They're the threat. They're the enemy. But it was kind of like, do they even know that he's around? Do they know that he's plotting against them? And so in my mind, the fact that Cal knew that Keener was a threat all the way back, we're going to talk about the timeline here in a moment, it just contextualizes the events of a lot of stuff. Specifically in Warlords of New York, you know, I've always said it was very interesting how determined the Black Tusk seemed to eliminate Keener when it was discovered that he was on Liberty Island. Of course, the Black Tusk and Natalia are allied with Cal, so I wouldn't be surprised at all if once they learned of his location, they said, send everything you have and take him out. Which, of course, Keener explained later on was his entire plan. That all led us to where we are now. But yeah, bottom line, this tells us that Natalia and Cal do know the threat that Keener poses to them, and I think that's pretty rad. Speaking of the timeline, we do kind of get a confirmation for when all of this is happening. Cal says that Melanie Hoskins made the trek to Silver Creek through a blizzard in February. So that would place all of this stuff happening with Silver Creek and Heartland and everything approximately 1 month after the events of the Division 1, and somewhere in the realm of 4 months before the start of the Division 2. Again, keep in mind that the current timeline for Year 6 Season 1 of the game is in late October, so it's been a little while since all of this happened, and that means that Keener and all of his allies have had this Hunter roster for a minute. Have they already been using it? Is it something that we're going to utilize in the Brooklyn DLC? We'll find out. Another interesting note I thought was how Cal orders Agent Zavala to wipe traces of some kind of program that this comm redacts the name of. Now, so far, the use of redaction in this season's comms, which of course is that little static stuff they'll play, has only been used to bleep out the name of Silver Creek. And so, unless he's talking about the Silver Creek program, which I don't really see that being the case, I'm very curious what this additional layer of secrecy is. I'm going to assume that it is a plotline that the Division Heartland was going to flesh out that is now either null or otherwise not ready to come into play, you know, given that game's cancellation. But yeah, I thought that was interesting. And then the last main thing here is that you see Agent Zavala mention that Donovan has called a meeting and wants everybody to come to the conservatory. Now, like I said earlier, we know that there were multiple agents in Silver Creek because Hoskins reports that to Keener. And so, yeah, the question is, was this Donovan person one of them? And I think that this begins to bring into question kind of the whole thread that Heartland's own cinematic trailer established back when we got it in, what was that, April of 2023? The whole premise and setup of the game was that they said a Division agent named Killian Tower was from Boston, and he went rogue. He murdered his entire team there, and he then booked it to Silver Creek. Another Division agent, Mackenzie Reed, I believe her name was associated with him and decided to follow him there, and that was kind of the main mystery and hook for the entire game. So obviously a lot of time passed between that trailer's release and the cancellation of the game, over a year, so things could have changed. But what I'm kind of wondering is Killian tied to all of this? Was he really not rogue and he was just under Cal's command? Did Cal tell him to murder his team and go to Silver Creek? I mean, we just don't know. If he is involved, is he linked to this Zavala person and Donovan? Are we going to actually get to hear what this meeting at the conservatory was in one of the final comms? We still have a few more weeks to go. Those are some of the questions that I'm kind of left with here. We don't yet have the answers to them, but it's very possible that we get them, like I said, in these final few weeks. And yeah, given everything that we learned this week and everything that we've been learning across this season, I'm very interested to see how this mini plot line is going to wrap up. But my friends, that is just about everything there is to go over with this week's new additional Descent Comm. Again, I'm sorry, I know you guys are probably like, just do the recap of everything. I'm going to at the end of the season. But these drops are just super compelling. I don't know about you guys, but I love jumping into Descent every week and getting these because, like I said, they're well worth the time. The illumination that this is providing to the entire Division universe is really cool, and I hope they continue to tie everything together as we head into the Brooklyn DLC. You know, I've said I hope that we see Melanie Hoskins there. It sounds like maybe she will be there. So yeah, anytime they want to tie all of this stuff together, I love it, and hopefully we see more moving forward. Any thoughts, reactions, questions, whatever you guys have after learning about everything that we went over in this video, I would love to see it down below. Where do you think things are headed in these final few weeks? As always, look forward to reading what you guys got. That is going to do it for me today, though, everybody. Thank you all so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one. RogueGold. Out.